video by Jimthecarguy, Subaru Impreza, the WRX. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be taking care of a power steering issue. Constantly losing power steering fluid. It's leaking from the pump. I'm going to take you up front. I'll show you, where it's leaking from, and I'm going to show you exactly how to replace the pump. What we're going to do is we're going to remove this cover here. 10mm bolts on here. Just unscrew these and take them out. You can just pull it right out of the way. We're going to take this cover off here so we can gain access to the top of the pump, or we can remove the lines. And the way you remove these clips, we want to keep these clips intact. We don't want to break it. We just squeeze these little pieces in here, and it comes right out like that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this power steering belt here. We're going to loosen it. It's a 12mm bolt right in the front right here, and there's a 12mm bolt right here. We're just going to remove those, and we're going to lower the belt down and take the belt off of the car. We just take the belt off and relocate that off to the side for now, because we're going to need to obviously put it back on. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to, it's pretty much empty, but we're all going to lose a little bit of fluid. So what we're going to do is we do have the bucket underneath there to try to catch the fluid, try to minimize the loss of fluid. So let me just take these bolts out, and I'll show you how that's going to go. I have a bucket down below, and we're going to take these hoses off, and we're going to wind up losing a little bit of fluid, but we will catch it down in the bottom. The one bolt is a 10mm, the other is a 14mm. Don't lose the bolt. Obviously, we're going to need to reuse it. Put this off to the side for now here. And have this switch. We got to take that switch and disconnect the electrical switch. Tight squeeze in there. We'll take that out. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the pump so we can pull the pump forward and out. We're just going to relocate this up and out of the way a little bit. We don't want to make too much of a mess, so we're going to put the rag here. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the pump itself. And there's a couple of bolts in here. They look like they're probably 13 or 14mm. One of them you'll see down in the bottom down there. It looks like it's about a 12mm. We're going to take off this whole entire bracket with the pump, and we're going to bring it over onto the workbench. We're going to remove that bolt down in the bottom right there, and there's one more down on the side here. So let me get some tools, and we're going to get started, and I'll try to show you the best I can. Okay, we're going to get down and get to that bolt down in the back that I told you about. It's in a real tight spot back there, so you're going to need a ratchet with the swivel and your 12mm socket. All right, we're going to break this loose. Once it's broken loose, we'll just take it out. Now you're going to need a magnet to get that out of there because you're going to drop it. I've done it many times myself. That's the bolt. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take those two bolts out down the bottom. I'll bring it down and I'll show you. This bolt right here, that actually holds the bracket there. There is another bolt down underneath. It's going to be very hard for you to see, but it's basically you have to reach your hand underneath the bottom to get in there. Once I get that bracket off, I'll show you where it's located. But that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to take that bolt out, and I'm going to remove the other bolt, and then I'll come right back and I'll show you what this looks like when it's out of there. There's our alternator bolt, and then we'll take our power steering pump out, and we're going to bring it over to the bench, and we'll switch over the pulley on the pump. So let's take it over to the bench, and let's continue over there. Now that we got the pump over here on the bench, this is our new pump. This is our replacement. What we're going to do is we're going to remove 3 bolts. One here, and another one in the back over here, so we can get this this pump off on here. All right. First thing we're going to do is take out these. They look like they're 12mm also, just to hold it stationary while you pry out the other one. Comes right out. Now we're going to reuse that bracket. But before we do anything, we need to switch over this piece in the back right here. So what you do is just get on here with a wrench. It's probably going to be a 17mm. And we're going to break this loose. Whenever you do this, you need to change the O-ring on the back of that too. So let me grab the new O-ring and we'll come right back. Okay, so now we have a new switch. We took the old switch out. We're going to take this O-ring off of the switch, and we're going to install a new O-ring that comes with it. And put your new O-ring on and seat it back down where it belongs into that little groove. And now we'll take our new pump and screw it in by hand as far as you can. Tighten it up with your wrench. Now I am going to put it in the vise just to make sure it's tight. So now we have our switch transferred over. Next thing we're going to do is switch over this pulley here. So we're going to put this pulley into the vise, and then we're going to take that off right there. Okay, you can break it loose like that. I know you can't see it, it's the other way around, but you're basically just unscrewing the nut. And what we'll do is I'll put it back on the bench. And we got the nut We unscrewed the nut off of here. We're going to take this pulley off, which is going to right out. Now we're going to switch over this piece right here, this bracket. It's only a 10mm screw. Alright, we're going to put the new one onto the new pump. Alright, then we'll tighten that bracket. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to reinstall our pulley and pump back into the bracket. So we'll put this in the bracket like this, and then we're going to re-secure it with the bolts that we previously took out. Put your back bolt in first. You may have to maneuver it around a little bit to get it in there. Got to tighten that bolt up. We're just going to snug it up into the pump itself. Now we have to get our other bolts in the front right here. You can screw them in. You can screw everything till it's snug. We are going to tighten these up further, but for now, I'm just going to snug them. Now, whenever I put a pulley back on, I'll just put the pulley on like this, obviously. But I always like to use thread lock on these pulleys just to avoid a problem. You can buy thread lock in any one of your parts stores, that any of them. And screw your nut back on, and we're going to tighten this down with that 18mm that we previously had. I'm going to do that in the vise, make sure it's nice and tight. Okay. Now that it's tight, we're going to take it back over to the car, and we're going to put it back in the car. So let's get back over there and we'll continue. Okay, now that we have our pump back, we're going to lay the pump back in here, and then we're going to catch the bolts, all three of these bolts here, even the one that you couldn't see underneath the bottom. We're going to get all of those bolts caught by hand first before we tighten anything else in. Just lay the pump in there for now. Make sure your switch doesn't get crushed by accident. We're going to get the bolts in that we can secure it in place. Okay. Now remember which ones you took out. I'm going to get the one that caught in the alternator here first, just to keep it from moving around while I'm trying to catch the others. Just screw them in by hand only. Once you've got everything caught, now you can tighten everything with your ratchet. Now remember, you're going into aluminum, so don't tighten it too tight. You don't want to break anything. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reattach that switch that we previously unplugged down there. Okay, we're going to plug our plug back together. And you'll hear it snap in. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to reattach our hoses and lines. What we're going to do is we're going to change the O-ring on the end right here. Just take the O-ring off. And we're going to grab the new O-ring and put it back on. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is just make sure it's lubricated, just a little bit of oil on that. Put it back into its spot. Just a little bit of oil on the O-ring so you don't damage it. Then we'll push the O-ring back down into the pump. And we're going to put a 10mm bolt back through it. Nice and tight. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reattach our pressure line. We're going to take this off because we're not using this. We have new seals for it. We're going to put a new seal on here. Put it through here. And this one goes on the bottom. And then we're just going to reinstall this. Again, don't cross-thread anything, only by hand. Remember, all the way in by hand. You don't want to cross-thread it at this stage in the game. You'll wind up having to change that fitting. Alright? Now once you got it screwed down as far as you can by hand, then you can bring in the ratchet. Because now you know it's not cross-threaded. Nice and tight. Next thing we do is just reinstall that vacuum hose that we previously knocked off. Vacuum hose is on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our power steering belt on the nose. Push it in. And then we're just going to adjust everything. Tighten that up. Okay, you want to have about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch of play in the belt. No more, and of course no less. If you make it too loose, the worst that's going to happen is going to squeal, and you're going to have to tighten it up a little bit. Alright, after we got the belt set, we tighten up our adjuster here. Nice and tight. And then we just come over here. And this one, we're going to snug this. We're not going to make it real tight yet. Line it up, and now we can tighten it up all the way. Okay. Alright, so we have everything together now. Everything is put back together the way it's supposed to be. We're going to put some power steering fluid into it, and we're going to wrap this job up. So let's grab some power steering fluid and let's fire it up. Okay, power steering fluid's in. We're going to fire it up, and then we're going to check for leaks. So let me go start it up. And okay. Now you want to check and make sure you have no leaks at any of your fittings on here. Everything looks nice and dry. We're going to let it run for a little bit, and we're going to check the power steering fluid level again. As you can see, it's already down. So we're going to let it run for a minute, and then we're going to check the fluid level, and we'll wrap this job up and get it out the door. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.